Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today I will be recapping a movie called Veronica Guerin which was released in 2003. This movie is all about a reporter for the Sunday Independent who exposed some of Dublin's most powerful crime barons and drug lords in 1996. Later that year she was gunned down by assassins hired by the same criminal drug lords she exposed. Sit back, relax and enjoy the recap. Veronica Guerin, a crime reporter for the Sunday Independent, becomes aware of how much Dublin's illegal drug trade is encroaching upon the lives of its working class, especially the children, and vows to expose the men responsibly. She takes on the case and is very determined to get to the root of it and arrest all the people and suspects related to the case. In 1994, illegal drug trade drove crime rates to the highest level ever records in Ireland. 15,000 people inject heroin every day and methadone clinics registered addicts as young as 14 years of age. As a member of the Sunday Independent staff, Guerin specialized in crime stories. She soon made a name for herself in international journalism circles for hard-hitting pieces that sought to expose the truth about Dublin's increase and expand drug trade and the part that increasingly violent and ruthless organized gangs played in it. Guerin was outraged by the mob activity she documented and frustrated by the inability of the police to bring the crime bosses to justice, so she launched a virtual one-woman crusade to bring down the gangs. She had no basic training as a reporter, an editor at the Sunday Business Post later recalled. She just had a very simple philosophy that she wanted to get the truth. And she always does all she can to bring the bad people to justice. That year Veronica Guerin, who is a journalist who is known for reporting church scandals and corporate corruption, started writing about crimes, during her story writing and research. Guerin's investigative style was a combination of tenacity and boldness. She typically worked out of her car rather than an office, staying on a story for weeks and weeks long after many other reporters would have given up. Sometimes she even camped out on a person's doorstep for days until he would agree to talk to her. And she has never relied strictly on police sources for her information. Instead, she went directly to the criminals themselves, persuading many of them to talk to her and detail their activities. Mindful of strict Irish libel laws that make it illegal for reporters to identify suspected by their name, she was careful to identify the subjects of her articles only by their street names or by colorful nicknames such as the Monk, the Coach, and the Penguin. Her work brought her face to face with gangsters, but she cannot connect any of the gangsters to the drug until all the information she has been gathering gets her deeper into the gangsters' world. These gangsters produce hard drugs and sell them to minors on the street, in schools, and in all kinds of shady places. Veronica vows to bring them to justice. Guerin begins by interviewing the prepubescent addicts who shoot up on the street or in abandoned buildings in the housing estates. She notices young teenagers injecting themselves and different types of syringes all around. She tries to get more information from the kids, but they are already out. Her investigation leads her to major suppliers and John Trainer, a notable source of information about the criminal underworld. Trainer is willing to assist her to an extent, but is not above misleading her to protect himself from nefarious drug lord John Gilligan. John Gilligan is an extremely dangerous drug lord and he will pretty much hurt anyone who interferes with his business. To steer her away from Gilligan and also to protect them so there will not be any trouble, Trainer suggests Jerry Hutch, a criminal known as the Monk, is in charge of the theft. Veronica takes Trainer's information and started gathering all the information that she can about the Monk. Then Guerin pursues Hutch and discovers he is not involved. As Guerin nears the truth, she is so close to finding the suspect, then she and her family member become targets. John Gilligan finds out about Veronica and how she might soon blow their cover. Then he suggests he sends her a warning to scare her and then thinks she will back off or drop the case. At the same time, a bullet is fired through a window in her home as a warning fails to stop her. Veronica figures out that it might be a warning since she noticed that the bullet was not targeted at anyone and also they will not make a move unless they are desperate with that. She concluded that she is getting closer to the truth, but instead of that to scare her, it gives her gut instead to pursue the case. Since she is close to the truth, John Gilligan, seeing that Veronica is still looking for more information, sends his guards to go after her. Just a couple of months later, in January 1995, Guerin opened the door to her home and came face to face with a man who pointed a handgun at her head, then lowered it and shot her in the thigh instead. The man fled and was never identified. She later speculated that the shooting was in retaliation for an article she had written about the theft of $4 million from a supposedly secure depot near the Dublin airport, the largest cash robbery in Irish history. Guerin interviewed a known con man who was reportedly the chief suspect in the heist and described him as the local head of a crime syndicate. She was taken to the hospital for her leg treatment. Then after leaving the hospital, Guerin, still on crutches, had her husband, Graham Turley, take her to see every crime boss she knew just to let them know I wasn't intimidated. She later revealed in an interview. Her employer had a security system installed in her house and arranged for her to have a round-the-clock police escort once she returned to work. But she cancelled it after only a few days, because she felt it hindered her efforts to gather information for her articles. She is then shot in the leg, and her young son Cahill is also threatened. Her husband Graham, mother Bernie, and brother Jimmy implore her to stop, but Guerin did not want to. She puts her family to safety and then visits John at his home. When Guerin confronts Gilligan at his home and is savagely beaten, she becomes more determined to expose him. Rather than press charges, which would necessitate her removal from the story, she forges ahead with the investigation. On June 26, 1996, Guerin appears in court to respond to parking tickets and speeding penalties that she had ignored. She is given a nominal fine of £100. On her way back home she calls her mother and then her husband to report the good news. She calls her office, and as she is speaking to her office while stopped at the traffic light on the NAS dual carriageway when two men riding a motorcycle pull up beside her. The driver breaks the window of her car and shoots her 6 times. The two flee and dispose of the bike and gun in a nearby canal. They did not leave any trace. After the murder of Guerin, Bowden was arrested, as were the other members of Gilligan's gang who were still in Ireland. In an agreement with the Attorney General of Ireland, Bowden agreed to turn state's witness, and become the first person to enter the Republic's Witness Security Program. Granted immunity from prosecution for the murder of Guerin, he was the only witness to give evidence against all 4 drug gang members at their trials in the Special Criminal Court: Patrick Holland, Brian Meehan, and John Gilligan. The investigation into Guerin's death resulted in over 150 other arrests and convictions, as well as seizures of drugs and arms. Drug crime in Ireland dropped 15% in the following 12 months. Which means they got the right person. In 1997, while acting as a Garda witness, Bowden named Patrick "Dutchy" Holland in court as the man he supplied the gun to, and hence suspected of shooting Guerin. Holland was never convicted of the murder, and he denied the accusation until his death in June 2009 while in prison in the UK. Guerin is mourned by her family, friends, associates, and the country. Her violent death results in the establishment of the Criminal Assets Bureau, and Gilligan, along with several of his henchmen, are tried and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The Irish responded to Guerin's assassination with shock, sorrow, and outrage. On the day of her funeral, the small chapel near the Dublin airport where she and her family regularly worshipped was packed with mourners, including Ireland's President, Prime Minister, and head of the armed forces. Others watched the service on television. On July 4, the day labor unions across Ireland had called for a moment of silence in her memory, people on trains and buses, in stores, and on the street, sat or stood quietly and bowed their heads in tribute. Admirers lined up in front of the offices of the Sunday Independent to leave flowers and sign a condolence book. The epilogue states that Veronica Guerin's writing turned the tide in the drug war. Her murder galvanized Ireland into action. Her death inspired many people, and thousands of people took to the streets in weekly anti-drug marches, which drove the dealers out of Dublin and forced the drug barons underground. Within a week of her death, in an emergency session of the Parliament, the government altered the Constitution of the Republic of Ireland to allow the High Court to freeze the assets of suspected drug barons. Thanks for watching this recap. Make sure to subscribe my channel and like the video. See you on another interesting recap. Bye.